I don't know either, Madam Secretary. We can't find it. We can't find a website. We did find an address that's registered for this company. Do you know where that address is?
Is there a problem with this contract?
I'll tell you about it. Madam Secretary, the address is registered to a political operative. Madam Secretary, the company, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. The company is registered to a political operative in Virginia. Do you know, just by way of example, whether this company that received $143 million in taxpayer dollars, has it ever done work for the government before?
I don't know. I can't.
The answer is it has not. And do you know why we know that? Because it was incorporated 8 days before this contract went out. You want the American people to believe that this is all above board?
Yes,
that $143 million of taxpayer money just happened to go to this.
Did you just hear that? A MAGA Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana just said out loud what we've known all along. A company with no website, no history, no prior government work, incorporated just 8 days before winning $143 million of your taxpayer dollars. And Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, sat there under oath and said, "I don't know. That is not incompetence. That is a cover-up." And now, for the first time, the United States Congress has sent a formal criminal referral to the Department of Justice, demanding a perjury investigation into Kristi Noem on 4 separate categories of lies told under oath. But here is what nobody else is connecting. For you today, the very tool that Trump's own D.C. prosecutor just used to go after Jerome Powell, that same tool, a grand jury subpoena, is now on the table for Kristi Noem, and she has no one to blame but Donald Trump. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what happened, why it matters, and what must come next.
The American public is fed up with public monies that seem to go into a black hole, especially in D.C., where no one is held accountable. One of the age-old tools that all prosecutors have to investigate any crime, including cost overruns, is a grand jury subpoena.
I don't believe that.
Did you hear what Jeanine Pirro just said? She said a grand jury subpoena is the tool prosecutors use to investigate cost overruns, public money going into a black hole. She said that on camera while defending her attempt to criminally prosecute Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell over a building renovation. Now here is what makes this so explosive, according to PBS NewsHour. A federal judge, Judge James Boasberg, looked at Pirro's investigation of Jerome Powell and found essentially zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. He said her justifications were so thin they were simply a pretext, and that case got thrown out. But Pirro's own words belong to the history books now, because she just handed prosecutors and the American people the exact legal argument for criminally investigating Kristi Noem. Think about it carefully. If a grand jury subpoena is appropriate for investigating building cost overruns at the Federal Reserve, what would you call $220 million of no-bid contracts funneled to companies that didn't exist, starring the Secretary of Homeland Security on horseback at Mount Rushmore? Here is the background you need to understand this fully. On March 3rd and 4th of 2026, Kristi Noem sat before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Judiciary Committee. She raised her right hand and swore an oath to tell the truth, and then, according to a formal letter sent to the Department of Justice on March 16, 2026, she lied repeatedly about at least 4 separate categories of facts. The letter was signed by Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois and Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the top Democrats on both judiciary committees. The law they cited is 18 United States Code.
Now, the American public is fed up with public monies that seem to go into a black hole.
Until March of 2031. This is not a political stunt. This is a federal criminal referral grounded in documented evidence, citing specific lies, specific statutes, and specific consequences. What you are looking at right now is the actual letter sent March 16, 2026, addressed to Attorney General Pam Bondi from the top Democrats on both judiciary committees. It lays out for specific categories where Noem's testimony under oath contradicts documented, verifiable fact. It cites federal judges, procurement, records, and internal DHS documents. This is not a press release. This is not a tweet. This is a formal federal criminal referral with a 5-year clock, and every single page of it is backed by evidence that already exists in the public record.
Just a coincidence that $143 million subcontract went to the husband of your press person, also someone that Corey Lewandowski, one of your special government employees, worked with extensively. So that was all a coincidence, right? Because you had no knowledge of this, no
Media
involvement.
company that
and none
gets
of the
the
people around you
contract,
had any involvement.
the ability to
So
choose the
taxpayers should just
subcontractors.
assume
We don't
this is
weigh
a
in
coincidence.
on who subcontractors are. There's not a legal process for us to determine what subcontractors are a part of a contract
So can
that
you,
goes out
can
for a
you
competitive
state,
bid.
Can you state
And
for
only
the record,
career employees at
excuse me,
DHS were in on the
can you
choosing of
state
those
for
media
the record
contracts.
then that neither you nor Mr. Lewandowski nor your press secretary, married to the husband of the person who got this $143 million
We were
contract,
not a part of the
can you
decision
state for the
making.
record that none of you that I've just described had any role, played any part, made any communication with any government agency that was involved in deciding who would get that contract?
To the best of my knowledge, none of us were involved in deciding who got those contracts
Not
for
in
the media
deciding, but
campaign.
were any of you involved in advocating, communicating?
Did you catch that? Senator Schiff asked her a very simple question. Did you or anyone around you communicate a preference to anyone involved in awarding that contract? And she said, to the best of my knowledge, none of us were involved in deciding. To the best of my knowledge, that is a lawyer's answer, not an innocent person's answer. Here is what we actually know from the reporting. ProPublica, one of the most respected investigative news organizations in America, found that Corey Lewandowski was on the routing sheet to sign off on all DHES contracts over $100,000. All of them, he had actual contract approval authority. That is a documented internal DHES routing document, not an allegation, a document. And Noem told Congress under oath that he had no authority to make decisions for the department. That is not a memory lapse. That is a direct contradiction of a written government record. Now let's talk about the money trail, because this is where it gets truly stunning. According to Reuters, one of the companies that received this contract, Safe America Media, was incorporated just 1 week before it won a $3 million federal contract. 1 week, it had no website, no government work history, no track record. And who ran the other primary contract? The Strategy Group, a firm run by Ben Yoho. And who is Ben Yoho? He is married to Tricia McLaughlin, Noem's own DHES chief spokesperson, the woman who spoke for Kristi Noem at the Department of Homeland Security. I believe this is corruption, plain and simple. I believe taxpayer dollars, your money, were steered to political allies through a process that deliberately bypassed competitive bidding. And I believe Kristi Noem lied about it under oath to the United States Congress. That is not a political opinion. That is what the documents show. What you're looking at right now tells the entire story in one image. 220 million taxpayer dollars, no competitive bidding, steered according to procurement records for pre-selected, politically connected companies. Safe America Media, incorporated 8 days before winning the contract, received $143 million. The Strategy Group, run by the husband of Noem's own press secretary, received $130 million in subcontracts. This is not a bureaucratic error, this is a pattern, and every time Noem was asked about it under oath, she said the same 3 words. To my knowledge, except the documents say different, the routing sheets say different, the procurement records say different, and now the United States Congress is saying enough, they want a criminal investigation.
She lied. Let's play that clip.
You have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently. And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt. But the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president
worked
know
with
you were going to do
OMB.
this?
Yes.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
Even Senator Kennedy.
Did you just watch that? She told Congress the contract was competitive, and the next day she had to admit it wasn't. She told Congress Donald Trump personally approved $220 million in ads featuring herself, and Donald Trump told Reuters, I never knew anything about it. One of those statements is a light old under oath to the United States Congress. That is the definition of perjury. Now, will Pam Bondi actually open a criminal investigation? Let's be honest, probably not. The DOJ already called this letter a political stunt, and they have already made their position clear. But here is what matters. The record is now permanent. The criminal referral is filed, and the 5-year statute of limitations on 18 United States Code Section 1001 runs until March of 2031.
System.
Future administrations
Now,
have options that this
The
one
American
refuses to
public
exercise.
is fed up
And here is what I
with
believe.
public
Every
monies
single
that
American
seem
who
to
paid
go into a
taxes,
black
who
hole.
went into these contracts, deserves to know the truth, not a DHES talking point, not a truth social post, but the documented, verified, court record truth. What we watched Kristi Noem do over 2 days of testimony was not a misremembering, it was a calculated, systematic attempt to protect herself and her allies from accountability. MAGA is not a movement, it is a business model, and the currency of that business model is your money. 170 U.S. citizens wrongfully detained, 210 court order violations in Minnesota alone, $143 million to a company that didn't exist 8 days before it got the contract. History will not forget this. The record will not be erased, and we, the people who refuse to look away, will not be silenced. Stay informed, stay outraged, stay engaged, because democracy does not protect itself, we do.